I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohowlers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Petrik here, and today in today's conversation with authors, we have Kian Ardalan, the author behind the newly released 11th Cycle, a book that I really love. I have reviewed this book recently. I personally call this book a grimdark inspired fantasy, a grimdark, Dark Souls, and Berserk inspired fantasy. So, hi Kian, please tell a bit about yourself first before we get started with all the conversations on this book.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so author of 11th Cycle. What is there to say? I recently graduated with a bachelor's for sociology. I live in Austria, Vienna, and I love fantasy books. I love writing them, and I'm just like, so this is the day after launch. So I'm currently on cloud nine. I'm really going with this high. It is exhausting and it is exhilarating and it fuels me and I'm just really excited to have a discussion about this, Dark Souls Berserk inspired novel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think that's the most fascinating thing about me. And it is what attracted me to your book because I am a huge fan of Dark Souls. I think I've made this very clear in many videos really. I mean, if you look back to my channel, if you look back to the first videos of my channel, it was a playthrough of me playing Bloodborne. Yeah. So but somehow it's kind of rare for me to find an epic fantasy inspired by Dark Souls or even Berserk for Western published novels. So I'm curious why Berserk and Dark Souls? What is it about those two that inspired you to write 11th Cycle?
It is genuinely insane to me that this has not been done before. Like that's not true. It has been done before. I feel like it hasn't done before to either a huge commercial level or so like for example, an Altar on the Village Green by Nathan Hall is also Dark Souls inspired, and it's a really good Souls-like book. But I think partially it could have had a better cover. And well, and again, other than that, if you go on our fantasy on Reddit and you have this question asked literally every week, I've checked. People usually give the same responses, right? I think that like the Black Sun was one of them. That there's some like Malazan is the one that gets mentioned so often. Yeah. And I'm like, but there's no actual like dark, not a book that really gives you a Dark Souls feeling, and like intentionally so. And that's what led to it. I wanted that book. I saw that nobody did it, and I saw market there, and I tried to rush it to market as quickly as I could. And it seems to be paying off now because I feel like that's something that is now being said, like, oh, you want a Dark Souls inspired novel? Here it is.
Here it is,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I can certainly vouch for that. I mean, just from the prologue alone, if you have played Dark Souls or Elden Ring and all that, you will know just how much of it's inspired already just from the prologue. And you can certainly feel in the world of Minetria that it is inspired by that series. And somehow, I'm just fanboying right now.
I love it. Keep fanboying.
Yeah. And somehow, even though it is still pretty clear it is inspired by Dark Souls, it is still the world that you created. I think that is what it is one of the most immersive things about the world of Minetria for me, because it is still your world. It is not a Dark Souls world, but if From Software Games ever decided to adapt this into a video game, they could. They really could.
It has the same feeling, right? It has the same vibe, and it's really interesting. I made a so I recently on self-published on it's a subreddit.
Okay.
I made a post like, hey, this is how I got all my sales and whatnot. And I talked about marketing. I'm like, I marketed this as a Dark Souls Berserk inspired novel. And I had two people specifically who are like, "Oh, aren't you worried that FromSoft is going to come after you because like you're?" No, that's not how this works.
Why?
And
Why would they come after you?
exactly. Like maybe if it was Disney, they would send you a cease and desist. But even then, they can't. They have no grounds to stand on, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't copyright a vibe. There is fair use law. Anyway, like that's what I did. I just gave people in the market what they wanted. And it's not like, because you mentioned this in your review, right? it's not like people haven't tried this before. You've had,
Mm,
Soulsborne adaptations, either as comics or as novels, which hasn't entirely hit the mark. There was the newly released actual, Dark Souls licensed book where people downloaded very, very much on
mm,
Goodreads, and or not down, but like one starred or two starred it. And I don't know, I think maybe it's just the fact that they're giving the licenses to other authors who may not understand the IP as much. I don't know what it is, but I
mm.
got insanely lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you started from playing Dark Souls 3, right?
Interestingly enough, no.
Oh, no.
And okay, so this is something that maybe a lot of people don't know, and there's a very specific reason why I marketed it as Dark Souls, but I didn't start with Dark Souls. It started with Hollow Knight, and I
Oh,
played,
okay.
yeah, and I love Hollow Knight. It's my favorite game ever. Um, And that's what made me like, God damn, I love the way this is telling the story. Well, and then it led me straight back to Dark Souls, which obviously I'd heard about.
Yeah,
And before I started playing the games, I just looked at Vidya lore
Vati.
videos. Yeah. And that suddenly like gave me a rush of like, I love this concept of environmental storytelling. As others put
Mm,
it, um, fractured pieces of the lore and everything that you have to put together. And that's kind of like why I then started going into Dark Souls. And I'm like, Dark Souls 3 exactly does the same thing as Hollow Knight. So I marketed it that way. And even in the
mm,
world of Minethria, you have the chittens of or the bugs of Duran,
mm.
which are directly a reference to Hollow Knight
Oh
because
my
they're these.
God. No wonder. I kept on thinking, I feel like I know this, but I also don't know about this. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And so that's how it started. It started with my love of Hollow Knight, and it then transcended onto Dark Souls. And I just kept on going with like, I love, and I think it's a type of storytelling which is very common in more Eastern
Hmm.
versions of storytelling, but not so much in Western forms of storytelling. And I noticed that trend from video essays on video games on YouTube, and I'm like, I have a sneaking suspicion it's the same for the literature world, where and I try to adapt that a little bit and bring that, you know, philosophy more into Western writing as well, or Western literature.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. And one of the I think people will notice this, and I also mentioned this to you because uh apparently this book, 11th Cycle, is written before Elden Ring came out. But I think new readers to this book, those who don't know about this fact, will immediately think that this book is inspired by Elden Ring. And I think I will allow you to say that it is all pure coincidence, right?
Yeah. Like we kind of discussed, and I told you, like, yes, it is unrelated, it is
Hmm.
coincidence, but it is undeniable that there's a reason why this coincidence happened. So, like, if you
Hmm.
talk about the rot that
The
plays,
rot.
yeah, Scarlet Rot from Elden Ring, and those decay is such a prominent theme in anything that FromSoft puts out there. It's in the forefront of even Sekiro. It's it talks about the stagnancy in a way that's like Dragon Rot, I think it was called. You
Hmm.
have a lot of these themes about rot, and I think that's why you find that there's a similarity there. But honestly, a lot of it, again, inspired. It has that feel, but a lot of it is genuinely my own ideas or concepts. There are some Easter eggs, I would say, which are
Hmm.
more like directly linked. So, for example, the flying manta rays are straight from
Hmm.
like Demon Souls,
Demon
right?
Souls, yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, there's nothing like one to one which I copied. It's just my way of bringing that feel into another medium. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they all really felt like Easter eggs, and the world itself is still your own, and I think that matters a lot. That matters a lot. And one of them, I think, when we're talking about From Software games, people always relate to how difficult it is to actually play Dark Souls games, right? Because the storytelling is difficult, the gameplay is difficult. But I think one of the things that I appreciate most about 11th Cycle is that if I want to piece the secrets, yes, it is difficult. There are a lot of secrets in 11th Cycle, but the story itself, it is very much accessible. The main story, I think it is very accessible, and I think that is very, very well done of you to do that. Well done. Seriously, it is well done. But I know that many readers will come into this one, and we all have talked about how much of it is grimdark, and I think people will expect that this one is pretty grim, this book, and it does get pretty grim. But what do you expect readers will take out of your books? Hopefully, I know that many readers will take a different meaning from your books, but what do you hope this book will achieve for them?
Great question. I think I do get asked this. I'll answer like this. Berserk has a main theme of that no matter how bleak things are, and no matter how dark it gets, that people persevere and push forward. I want something similar for 11th Cycle, where, as I described it, there is anguish that I want my readers to feel, but controlled anguish. It is, given to you bit by bit so that you are prepared for it. And at the end of the day, I want a lot of it to be cathartic. There is a fascinating phenomenon with the Souls games in general, which I don't know why this hasn't been studied yet, because I think it's fascinating. People who sometimes have seemingly, according to them, very bad levels of like clinical depression, they play the games and they feel like it is cathartic to them. They feel like it helps them deal with their depression, and they come out the other side. And I think that's so interesting, because there's such uncompromising games. They don't care if you have depression. And I think there's a level of beauty to that there is something there that you earned. And it kind of, again, with Dark Souls as well, there's the metaphor of like you going hollow. That's very specific to depression, right? So yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I think that's I want my readers to come out of it with a sense of catharsis, maybe emotionally drained, but also at the end of the day, like almost like a detox. I'll say, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean though, and that's also my experience in reading Berserk for the first time. It is relentlessly dark. Berserk is just insane, but at the same time, Guts, the main character, well, live up to his name. He just never gives up, no matter what happens. And I think that simple thing, that one simple thing, is just kind of show just how powerful human can be in the face of overwhelming darkness, right? And I think that also what attract us to, well, Dark Souls and all that games. And also your book, I would say also your book, because I think I think you captured the main theme and the main point of that, that you must never give up no matter how dark things get. And it gets really dark. Yeah.
That's what I think is so funny, because I didn't know about this until people told me. Apparently there's this thing where you say that a book is grimdark, and a lot of people roll their eyes and go, oh, I've heard that before. Like, it's not really grimdark. And this is a book where people are going, okay, no, I understand why this has content warnings. It actually needs them.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the fact that people are going, yeah, but nothing in the book was gratuitous, is also a great. Like, that makes me so happy that nobody feels like any of it was glorified or gratuitous. I put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah. My hope is that people can actually see and not give up after that scene, you know which scene I'm talking about. I hope that people will,
everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does. But I hope that, it was brutal. I have talked about this. It was insanely brutal, but I also hope that people will still continue to see the result after what happened, because that's where the payoff really comes. Without it's contrast, right? It's contrast. The darkness showcased just how powerful the light is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, at least what my theory is that it happens at a point in the book where people have been following the characters for so long, and it's not just the one character, right? It's 5 different characters, that you can't stop. You have to keep going. in
Yeah.
whatever capacity you need to. So Shauna Lawless is currently reading the book. She's
Ah.
at 90%
Ooh.
as of this recording. Maybe she's beyond that, I don't know. And she's loving it.
Hmm.
And she got to that point and she could not wait to see what happens. So she had to skip to see what
Ah.
happens.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm sorry, I'm maybe there are listeners here who are going to go after her. Please don't.
Yeah,
And
please,
I truly
please.
believe, yeah, like I know it's a sin, but I truly believe like you do whatever you need to do in order to enjoy the book. If you need to do that to be able to cope with the events that happened, then go for it. Like, and no judgment from me whatsoever.
Yeah, it is reader's
Yeah,
experience after all.
yeah. I had something similar happen to me when I was reading Dark Age, and I'm sure you
Oh,
know. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Something big happens, and I just skipped ahead just to make sure that one specific character was okay, and that's it.
Yeah, Dark Age is pretty brutal as well.
Yeah,
I think the tone in that book is really bleak. Yeah, Pierce
yeah,
Brown, what have you done?
absolutely. And that's also with this book. I had people writing me and asking, "What did these characters do to you?" Or
Yeah.
like, "What is wrong with you?" Yeah,
Also, it's fascinating because you use five main POV characters, and four
yeah,
of them are written in first person POV. And this is kind of rare in epic fantasy. I think when it comes to multiple point of view, I think many authors and many writers just choose a third person POV to use multiple point of view chapters. What made you decide to use first person for four characters and then third person omniscient for one more character?
Okay, so this is a great question. Part of the reason is because I was reading Iron Gold, I was reading Dark Age, and I just had this,
Ah.
and I just remember thinking, you can do that?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
have, and I'm like, that's so interesting. And it kind of came to mind while I was like, the idea of 11th Cycle was coming to me, and I thought it was so interesting that, the 11th seed is third person omniscient
Hmm.
and the other characters are first person. And when you're introduced to the 11th seed, it's this character that is has no real idea. It's this clueless being. It's this vacant vessel, so to speak, needing to be instilled with an idea, right?
Yeah.
Uh, on the other hand, you have all the other POVs, which are fully realized characters. They know who they are. So that made total sense for me. You have this one character that is third person omniscient because they don't have an identity, they don't have anything to ground them. And
Hmm.
third person omniscient really gives you that kind of distance that you need, this almost like foggy lens to look at the world through this emotional state. And at the same time, all the other characters are first person narratives because it just intensifies the rawness of all the events that they
Hmm.
go through so much more. And that was the main reason I did that. And it is different. And I'm very, very happy that I went through with that and took a risk.
Yeah, I think the risks will pay off nicely. The first time I read through something like this is also through Iron Gold because, well, it is rare, okay, to find multiple first person POV in epic science fiction and fantasy. It's kind of rare now, and seeing how Pierce Brown pulled it so well, it just wow, this is just incredibly brilliant, and I wish there are more books like this. And it surprised me. Honestly, it surprised me that 11 Cycle is written in that way. And yeah, so well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
The dangerous things about using multiple first person POV is that sometimes they can feel a bit too same, right? Because all of them
Mm,
use I, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think that's why it is so important that each character in this particular case especially have their unique voice to them. Yeah, their unique
Yeah.
voice. Yeah, and you got that. You really got that. From my perspective, you got that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was tough. And I think some readers, when they started, said that they just weren't used to the first person format. So for them, it
Hmm.
was a little bit samey. But that was a hurdle that, from what I heard, they quickly got over. They read the first 10 chapters or so, and then they realize that no, all these voices are very distinct because they all have a very unique kind of thing that they're battling, a unique conflict that they're facing. Yeah.
It's really fun, right? When there is no rule to this fantasy, right?
Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think there's this I don't know, I love that with this book specifically, I have so much room to experiment with different kind of concepts. And there's one thing that I'm so proud of. You didn't catch on to this, I don't think, but it's one of the hidden plot lines, and I use that kind of like narrative storytelling devices for that. But like, I love to experiment, and this is so perfect for that. And even the series, I do think that I almost want to end the entire series with an illustration rather than yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a spoiler or not.
Yeah. Wow. That will
Yeah.
be very unique if you can pull that off.
Yeah. That's the plan.
Yeah. And do you have any favorite characters to write? I mean, there are 5 characters, 5 main POV characters. Do you have a preference?
I love all of them.
Yeah.
I think if I had to pick a least favorite, and again, I already love all of them, so it's not like I'm saying that I don't love this character. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Roma is a character that I really enjoyed writing about, but doesn't compare to like the amount of I don't know, Delilah specifically, I feel like was one of the most interesting characters that I had the opportunity to write about. Followed right behind by Nora.
Yeah.
For reasons that I won't get into because spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they're all very, very interesting in their own right. And I had this epiphany like a few weeks ago. They all face some sort of crisis in terms of identity as well. And I think that's something that kind of really binds them all, even with the 11th seed.
Yeah, makes sense. It does. And yeah, identity crisis is real.
Yeah.
And I think we can safely say that people who first knew about 11th Cycle, they first saw the cover art. And so I will have to ask, do you have any involvement in the creation of the cover art, or is it all up to the artist Nino is?
I went to Nino and I told him what the concept for the book is, that I want the cover art to be in a Dark Souls style or aesthetic, which he nailed, by the way. And I described the concept of an Elder Guard to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Initially, I did have the idea that the guard would be standing like at a like side stance to the camera, but he completely like no, he showed it from the front, and I think that works so well. That's basically what I told him. Like it has the other guard has 3 arms. The face is hidden behind this like slitless visor that's just this like it tapers at the chin. I described the hair. I sent him the bits and pieces from the actual thing, the book. I sent him bits that describe the Elder Guard, and what ended up coming out of it is amazing. Like, so one thing, for example, is that the Elder Guard is a mortal that failed the ascension into becoming a knight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it shows in the way it's depicted. It hides the shame of its failed evolution under the shoulder cape that covers only the singular hand, right? It is asymmetrical, and I think it's really cool. I think I already told you about this. It literally is the guarding the entrance into this world. So when a person picks up the book, they make a very conscious decision to push past the guard, push past the warning that is the guard, and enter this world. So it's pretty much all of that, and I'm very, very happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, the first time I saw through this cover art, I was so shocked. Back then, I knew nothing about you yet. Okay, I saw this cover art. Wow, this reminded me of Bloodborne immediately. And then you mentioned it as a Sourceborne inspired novel. I'm like, okay, I have to read this one. So
Awesome.
it is so awesome, so awesome. And speaking of Dark Souls, apparently marketing this as a Dark Souls inspired novel and also actually fulfilling on that promise really sells well. You actually achieved 1,000 pre-order, right? Across all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did so just before launch day hit, 551 ebook pre-orders. And somewhere around I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to say about 420 to 450 paperback. So definitely over 1,000 already on that count. I do
Yeah.
not, however, know about the audiobook. I'm assuming, and fingers crossed, that it's like another 500 as well. Yeah.
Nice. It is well deserved. And speaking of audiobook, your audiobook used two narrators, right? How do you feel about this? This is actually very cool, you know.
I feel amazing about that. Honestly, I knew from the beginning I wanted this to be multicast because you do have 5 POV, so it's perfect for that. And it was great because they originally I did like, I want to see how far I can push this. Can I get actually 4 to 5 narrators?
Wow.
Yeah, I knew it's unlikely, but whatever.
Yeah.
But no, it's all good. I got 2 perfect narrators who played so well off of each other and do such a good job. And hearing their portrayal of these characters and how they deliver on the raw emotions of, like we were talking about that scene.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
tough reading it. It's something else entirely hearing the anguish. Yeah. I see like you're grimacing for a very
Yeah,
good reason.
yeah.
But their performance was great. And when I originally was, they asked me, who do you want cast for the book? I sent them clips of Vadividya and how he narrates stories, because I'm like, you don't have to, mimic his accent or anything like that. I just like the cadence and the tone and just the feel of it. That's what I want, and I think that works so well, especially if you're marketing something as Dark Souls. What better than to have the audiobook have that same feel as the literal, like, the lore guy of those games.
Vati.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Vati's narration is super good, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Vadi, if you're listening to this,
Yeah. Come on,
it's
Vati.
iconic.
Yeah, Vati. If you're somehow watching this, I think yeah, we both of us admire your work. Seriously, it is incredible.
Yeah.
And
Really.
I have listened to the sample that you provided. I think it was I think it was the first chapter of Delilah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was. It was.
Yeah, it was that one, right? Yeah, it was that
Yeah,
one.
it was.
Yeah, I remember I only listened to that one and I was amazed already. And I'm not an audiobook user. And considering the fact that I'm amazed, I think it means good thing. Because again, as I said, I'm not an audiobook user. I haven't listened to the other sample for the who's the other one?
I think
Who's the other
Evan Jordan.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that one yet.
Yeah. The way he does the 11th Seed, that's something I think you are going to love because it's really something else. It's incredible. And yeah, I almost like, yeah, I'm just gonna I'm fanboying over their narration because it's so phenomenal. Even like Dom, so from Dominish Books,
Yeah.
was like, yeah, the book's good, but he said that, and I agree with him, the audiobook elevated to a whole other level.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, this is one of those situations where I wish I'm more of an audiobook user, you know.
I get it. I get it.
It's just hard for me to concentrate. It's so hard.
I totally hear you. I think I used to be the same where I was so often distracted. I think I'm leaning more to it now because
Ah,
after writing words for a whole day, I don't want to look at another page. So it's very
ah,
convenient that I get to then listen to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess that really makes sense though. Yeah. You've been
Yeah.
typing all day and then oh no, you have to see words again. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I haven't actually read your first book yet. The 11th Cycle is your second book, right?
Uh, yes, but technically the third, but we don't talk about the first.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, okay.
so I did do a novella years and years ago, which was just because it's like people enjoyed it enough that I'm like,
Oh,
I'm just gonna put it out there if people want it. It was like my first, and again, it was very cheap. I didn't get an editor for it. It was, but people enjoyed it enough that it's like, okay, if you want to read that, you can. And then I had
ah,
my real debut, which was the fantastically underwhelming epic. And again, that was also like a side project because I
mm,
even then, as I was writing it, I really wanted to do 11 Cycle. I was already like holding it in. I'm like, I'm gonna finish this book. I'm gonna start 11 Cycle right after, and I did just that.
no, okay.
Um, yeah, but they're very different. Like the fantastically underwhelming epic is nothing like 11 Cycle, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that people recognize me for this rather than that. Yeah.
Well, I still have to give that book a try someday, and I will make sure to come with the right expectation. Yeah, it won't be the same as 11 Cycle, and to be fair,
No.
not a lot of books is similar to 11 Cycle. Probably none, really. None that I've read. I don't know which book. Well, probably playing Dark Souls. That really is the similar one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me. I don't think anyone has ever read 11th. Like the only other author, okay, two. So Dr. John Morrow of Grimdark magazine, he's the only one I think who compared me to another like quote unquote author. And one of them was Haruki Murakami, which I'm very flattered
Ah,
about. Yeah.
interesting.
And he said that he also loved the expansive world building and compared that to the Stormlight what was
Archive.
it? Yeah, Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. And he's it does really, but other than that, I don't think, and again, because it is very weird, it is very different. And who would you compare that to?
Yeah.
Even Amazon bestseller rankings has listed as gothic romance,
What?
which
What?
yeah, not on the US store, but I think like on the German store, it has done that. And it was so funny because I think even Amazon is like, what is this? I don't know what to do with it.
Gothic romance.
Yeah, exactly. Which, maybe, I don't think so, but it's a stretch.
Okay, that is totally unexpected. Who would you say though as the main inspiration behind your writing? For authors or series, who would you say as the biggest inspiration for your writing craft?
I think I really have to say Mark Lawrence really got me into
Ah,
fantasy the most. Yeah, I really admire his work. Granted, I only read The Red Queen's War so far. His new book, The Book That Won't Burn, and the original The Broken Empire series. I think that's what, and I think what really caught me with is just his prose and
hmm.
his imagery. It really struck a chord with me. I don't think our writing styles are very similar, though. I think he just made me realize that like I really like to write. I really like fantasy, and I leaned more into that.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I would ever compare myself to any other author. Not because I'm like, oh, I'm special. No, just I don't know. I think I just think I'm doing my own thing, and that's okay.
Yeah, and Mark Lawrence is also kind of doing his own thing. His books can be considered as experimental as well in science fiction and fantasy. He doesn't stick to one rule. If you read Broken Empire, Red Queen's War, and then I assume the book that wouldn't burn, but pretty much all of his series, all of them are so different to one another.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have different reactions to that. You have people saying like, "Oh, he's selling out. He's no longer doing the edges." It's like, no, he's just exploring different stories. Let the guy write what he wants to write. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read almost all of his books, and I click with some, I don't click with some, and yeah, I think that's kind
Yeah.
of the result of his writing. And I think, well, objectively, I think it is brilliant because he's trying so many stuff in his books. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And now I have to ask, which one is your favorite Sourceborne game so far? I need to know, okay? I know that this is a difficult question because I don't think
It
I can choose.
is.
I don't think I can choose as well.
I mean, I feel like you've invited me on the show just to ambush me now. Um, um,
It's the way of the game, man. It's the way of the games.
it's the way of the game. I think it's so tough. I think I will say Dark Souls 3
Hmm.
just for the ending of the
Okay.
Ring City DLC.
Oh yeah, that,
And
that that one was so cool. So cool.
yeah, but also like not just that, I think even more than that actually, it's the end of fire
Yeah.
ending and how the firekeeper goes, Action One, dost thou hear me still? And I just like this the fade to black and her speaking, and I think that just echoed across time. That left such a strong impression with me.
Yeah, totally understandable. I think Dark Souls from Software Games is the only games that can pull something like that. I mean, the ending is just a few, 1 minute, only 1 minute, I think. It is just so short, but the impact is so everlasting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that I try to instill in my books where or in 11 Cycle specifically where I don't tell the reader necessarily how to feel because I hope that my work has enough confidence in just putting the scene in front of you and letting like being confident enough and being like you're going to feel something by reading this. And Dark
Oh,
Souls does it very well, where it's not a character saying I'm sad. It just
yeah.
shows you the event and it's confident enough from the like the painted picture that you will feel a certain way.
Sometimes reader complain, right? Like, please do show more, do not tell. Well, Dark Souls is almost all show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. And but your book isn't like that. I think your book does a great job, as I said, in being accessible, even though you do a lot of show. You do a lot of show and not too many telling. Yeah, not too many telling.
Mm,
And I think that's really important. You have to also grab people's attention. And I think
yeah.
that, yeah, this is incredible. And I still haven't fully as I told you, I haven't completed the puzzle of the epigraphs in my mind yet. I think I will have to do that on my second read. I don't think I can do that on my first read when the main story itself is so gripping. Yeah, I finished this book in 4 days, 4 days.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
I was blown away. I told my mom that and she gawked. She's like, "What? 4 days? That's not possible." Anyway, um, but
it,
no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
it's rare. It's rare for me to be able to do that now because life is so busy. But as you said, I got a lot of feelings from reading this book. I got a lot of imagery in my mind. I love visualizing. I love visualizing the books that I've read. If I read a book and I can visualize the scene, I think that is very important to me. I love visualizing the words, right? And I think one of the most visual the scene that I like to visualize most is the blacksmith scene.
I knew it. I knew it.
I just love the blacksmith scene so much. It just bring everything I love about Dark Souls in that one scene so much. And I have to ask, is that inspired by Dark Souls? I mean, it has to, right?
Like the blacksmith in particular.
Yeah, yeah, the blacksmith in particular.
Maybe unconsciously. I just
Ah, okay, okay.
it was more just this like obviously yes you have a lot of imagery of like blacksmiths in
Ano
Dark
Rondo.
Souls itself,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's also just partially this idea of having a form of deity that
Mm.
is a creator, but in the form of like somebody who's a blacksmith. And I like that a lot. There's artwork out there of a cosmic blacksmiths like striking anvil and creating stars because of that. And it was more like that. I wanted to have this concept of the blacksmith
Uh,
being one of these elders as a deity. At the same time, I'm like, how cool is that every single seed that came was bestowed their weapon by the
this
blacksmith.
this
And
guy.
yeah,
It's just so cool. And just from that alone, just from this blacksmith scene alone, it just opens up so many possibilities about what happened in the past of Minetria. See, that's the kind of thing that I love so much because, as I said, the story is accessible, but there are just so many secrets. And if you should decide to pursue actually writing, let's say, story about all the previous seeds, it could work. It could work.
I very well might. Like that's the thing. Like there's so much history there that I could very well go to the very first cycle, or even
Yeah.
before the Contract of Time, for example. And one thing that I'm like, ooh, that would be a cool novella, maybe even a novel,
Mm. Hmm.
is about the stealing of the Elder King's eye. Like I think that would make a really cool
Ah.
novella, for example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It totally would. Totally. But how before we end this conversation, we have talked plenty, and I think for the rest, I will leave to readers to find out for themselves. I think it's better that way. But I will just ask, when will the second book be released? Probably just approximately, and how many books do you plan for the series?
So the first question, when will it be released? Now that launch day craziness is almost at an end, I'm going to get back to. I already started writing it. I already love the way it's taking shape. I plan at the latest in 2 years' time, because I'm sure I'm going to have the first draft finished this year. But
Mm.
just like with 11 Cycle, I want to give myself time to do a couple of drafts, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe 4 drafts, 5 drafts, making sure that it is really, really as good as it can be. Um, and then maybe it'll come out a year sooner, but I think I'm looking at a 2 year time. And I think that's with a series like this, I don't think that's a bad thing. That gives people 2 years to theory craft, discuss about it, and yeah. And I remember the last time we discussed, I'm like, oh, like a 4 series, maybe a
Mm.
fifth book. The more I think about it, and the more I'm like, you know what? I could make it 4 books, but I feel like there's going to be such an expansive world and different cultures to explore.
Mm.
It almost feels like a shame not to just go ahead and make it 5 books in that case, because you want, like, I do think there is an element of wanting to see what, if you look at the map, the northern swamps, a little bit
Yeah.
more of the forest of ash, stuff like that. And I feel like there's so much there that maybe it will be warrant 5 books in total. Yeah,
Yeah, I think five books sounds good for this series. There's still so many things to explore, so many things. And yeah, if there's possibility for more and doesn't feel forced, well, you should do it. Really, you should do it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much the end of this conversation. And for those of you who are watching this, if you haven't read 11th Cycle yet, I truly, truly recommend it, especially if you are a fan of grimdark fantasy, Dark Souls, and Berserk. It is absolutely incredible. One of my favorite books now. And I just want to say thank you so much to Kian for coming to this channel to talk about 11th Cycle with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope to do this again when book 2 is coming out.
And hey, who knows? Maybe we can talk spoilers in one of the
Yeah,
conversations. Yeah, I think that would be great, right?
I would totally be down for that. I think obviously I can't confirm a lot of the stuff because I want the readers to be
Yeah,
able to form their own theories. But yes, like the stuff that is, firmly canon, absolutely. Let's do
yeah.
it.
And definitely do not confirm any theory. Do not.
No,
I think
no.
that's part of the fun of an ongoing series. It is one of the main charm of an ongoing series to theory craft and also, well, let's see whether our imagination comes true or not.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much it from me today. As always, thank you so much for watching and bye bye. Thank you so much, Kian.
Bye, guys.